Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything. Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a book. This is a self-help book called Dissolving the Ego and Realizing the Self. We've just started the Realizing the Self portion, and we're on a really long chapter that had 48 tidbits of knowledge about the concept of realizing the self through the nature of divinity, self, and truth. It poses the concept that truth is consciousness, and consciousness comes from a surrender to God, not a surrender to the human ego. Enlightenment is not a condition to be obtained, it is merely a certainty to be surrendered to, for the self is already one's reality. It is the self that is attracting one's spiritual information. Because divinity is non-linear and intangible, God is the ultimate screen upon which to project the endless errors and proclivities of the human ego. Consciousness calibration research confirms that God is transcendent, inherent, and present in all that exists as the very source of existence itself. Thus, the nonlinear is simultaneously present in the nonlinear. The self is the ultimate reality by virtue of identity. It is it. The self knows the ultimate reality by virtue of identity. It is it. The self thereby recognizes the presence. Allness of divinity is strongly confirmed by the immense power of love and as intrinsic to creation and divinity. The presence of love is the all-pervasive and experienced as one intrinsic self. It melts linearly into oneness, which is simultaneously exquisitely gentle and paradoxically infinitely powerful. Love is the ultimate law of the universe. Divinity is the source of all existence, including one's own. Here's a question for you. It is said that the seeker and the sought are one and the same. Is that correct? It is actually incorrect. Here's the answer. That which is looking for self is the self or ego. Thus, lowercase self, S. Uppercase S, self, is the good one. That's in the title of the book. Let me read this question and answer again. It is said that the seeker and the sought are one and the same. Is that correct? Here's your answer. It is actually incorrect. That which is looking for the capital S, self, is the ego or little self. Thus, they are not the same. The capital self has no need or capacity to search for that which is already is. Realize that the depiction of God as a judge is an illusion of the ego that arises as a projection of guilt from the punishment of childhood. Realize that God is not a parent. God's grace could be understood as absolute certainty of the karmic coherence of the entire universe in all its expressions as realms and possibilities. Grace is not the provision within the realm of consciousness for the availability to use all the means to salvation and absolute freedom. By choice, one determines one's own fate. There are no arbitrary forces to be reckoned with. What is searching for higher truth is not a personal I. Rather, it is an aspect of consciousness itself that expresses it as inspiration, devotion, dedication, and perseverance, all of which are aspects of the spiritual will. Therefore, the source of the search for the self, capital, is the capital self itself, actualizing the necessary processes by virtue of its own qualities, which are facilitated by grace. As can be discerned by consciousness research at this time, the infinite potentiality of the unmanifest became manifest as the energetic submatrix of the potential physical universe. In its contact with matter, the energy of consciousness actualized the potential of biological life. Consciousness as life is one and the same basic reality. In spiritual terminology, consciousness is the radiance of divinity, the light of God, of Genesis. Because the term of God or divinity are problematic in their own place, one can refer to deity as the ultimate omnipotent reality, the absolute irreducible source of existence. Subjectivity devoid of content and beyond the duality and object itself, the subjective I of the capital self is independent of content or form, beyond all thought or concept. It is not feelings or thoughts that are important, but only the subjectivity that underlies their seeming importance. Paradoxically, it is radical subjectivity that leads to the amazing discovery of the only possible true objectivity. The only fact that can be objectively verified in all times and places and under all conditions by anyone anywhere is the absolute irreducible fact of subjectivity. Even radical scientific inquiry leads to the discovery that without subjectivity, nothing is knowable, nor could it even be said to exist. The awareness of awareness, the awareness of being conscious, and the awareness of content all depend on rising out of this subjectivity. The subjectivity of consciousness is the illumination of the self, capital Self, as the universal I of reality. It is not the eyeball of God. It is the I, letter I. That I, it is not the I of God, eyeball. That I is the essence of all that is and includes the totality of the presence as the ever-present source of existence, beyond all time or place. It has it has no beginning and no end. Creation and the Creator are one and the same. To describe God as manifest or unmanifest, or as transcendent or immanent, are only arbitrary points of view. Reality is beyond all such attempts at description. Truth is autonomously self-evident by virtue of its existence and allness. Life, like existence, has no opposites, just as truth has no opposites. Self-existent pseudo-reality, such as falsehood. Truth is either present or not. Divinity, God, allness, oneness, and the absolute are all that is. No opposite to God can exist. Only the truth is true. Nothing else exists. All fear then arises from attachment to form due to the illusion that form is a necessary requirement for existence. Death is not possible to life any more than a shadow can kill light. Truth is not impaired or negotiated by falsity, and only its expression can be misunderstood or misrepresented. There is no opposite to life, to God, to truth, or to allness of reality. The realization and knowingness of God is radically and purely subjective. There is not even the hypothetical possibility that the reason could arrive at truth. Truth is knowable only by virtue of the identity of being it. Truth is not radical simplicity and obviousness of God. It is unity. The word unity signifies the completeness of the self-identity of existence. All is complete by virtue of being itself. No descriptions or nominal designations are required. They are all distractions. Even to just witness requires no thought. There is no necessity to mentalize reality. It does not enhance what is, but instead detracts from it. Oh yeah. Evil is not the opposite of God, but simply the denial of God. Just as falsity is not the opposite of truth, but its refusal. Truth has no trappings. Many false teachers indulge in theoretical self-presentations that are merely lures and self-gratifications of being, quote-unquote, special. Truth is actuality. Non-truth is false because it never existed and therefore was never recorded, which is why it exhibits a false response to consciousness research testing. Consciousness only responds to what is or has been in reality. The source of consciousness is the absolute reality, classically called truth. The only energy that has more power than the strength of the collective ego is the spiritual truth. Truth reveals itself by virtue of the omniscience of the field of consciousness, in which omniscience recognizes the reality of truth and does not give recognition to falsity, which is properly defined not as the opposite of truth, but as its absence. The power of truth itself is the quality of divine love that, in its infinite mercy, dissolves personalities back into the reality of self, positionalities back into the reality of the self, capital Self. Proselytization is an expression of vanity of the ego that seeks status through agreement or dominance. Truth is complete and total within itself, and therefore without needs. Falsity is not the opposite of truth, but merely its absence. In reality, truth has no opposite, just as cold is not the opposite of heat, nor light is the opposite of darkness. Darkness represents the absence of light, just as cold indicates the absence of heat. In reality, the love of God, like the sun, shines equally on all. The ultimate is the realm of non-form, non-limitation, and non-locality. Therefore, it is the realm of totality of the ever-present all. There is only existence. Existence requires no cause, and to think as much is to create a fallacy of logic. By existence, we mean discernible thought through observation, and it imputes the hypothetical change of condition from non-existent to existent. However, that which is always was in its completeness beyond all time. Looking for a primary cause is an artifact of mental activity that arises along with the concept of time and space. Beyond time and space, there are no events, no beginnings, and no endings that are beyond the categories of human thought or reason. Well, that's that. I hope you have a lovely day. That's the end of the chapter. Join tomorrow as The Presence of God, Chapter 9. Please subscribe if you've enjoyed. My name's John Michael at the Context is Everything Media Network. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. God bless.